There's going to be a higher risk of tropical cyclone development by next week in the main development region. Taking a look at the global tropics hazards outlook, we do see that for the week ending July 25th, right in the middle of this area, we do see that there's an enhanced risk of tropical cyclone formation where we have up to a 40% chance of tropical cyclone formation by week 2. So it's definitely something we're going to need to pay attention to over the next several days. And of course, it's still relatively uncertain regarding the possibility a tropical storm will form in this area when it's beyond a week away. But since the global tropics hazards outlook has now identified that there's going to be an area, at least a strong tropical wave to where a tropical storm could develop, it's definitely at least something to be aware of. And the European model has been of course leaning a little bit towards the fact that we're going to see a strong tropical wave move in by next week, which could become our next potential major tropical storm. Take a look at the European model in the very long-term future. We do see that by the Friday, July 21st timeframe, we see a formidable tropical wave move into the area, and there's quite a bit of convective activity surrounding it, which shows that this storm is relatively healthy, and it certainly will have the possibility of potentially developing into a tropical storm depending on how much wind shear there will be, as well as the amount of dry air. However, the European model as of right now doesn't expect a strong amount of wind shear to exist right over the main development region, which is very concerning. Still a lot of days to iron out the forecast, but with the European model and even the GFS model leaning towards a strong tropical wave, this certainly does raise the possibility of a tropical storm by next week over this area. So we're definitely going to pay very close attention to this. A key factor that will determine if we're going to see a tropical storm in the main development region or not is the amount of wind shear that will be over that area. If we were to take a look forward with the latest run of the European model, we do see that the wind shear will remain relatively light over the main development region, which is very concerning. However, it's good to point out that at least for the near future, there's going to be a strong ridge located that's going to force a lot of the first few tropical waves to move a lot further southward to the point where they won't have any chance of developing this far south, because the Coriolis effect won't have much of an impact when it comes to tropical waves moving this far south, which reduces the rotation, and as a result, it reduces the convergence necessary for tropical cyclone development and for the pressure to lower along the surface. So at least for the near future, it does seem like anything, at least in the southern portion of northern Atlantic, will have a good chance of developing into a tropical storm. But the concerning thing is that the wind shear will remain light for the most part in the main development region, and where this tropical wave will develop will be in a small area where the wind shear will remain just light enough. However, there will be strong enough upper level winds located just to the north and the south of it to allow for this storm to have a pretty good outflow, which could be pretty concerning, because if this ends up having a really good outflow, then we could see the center of circulation become closed a lot quicker, which will mean the storm will intensify a lot quicker. We're going to see a lot more of an upward motion when there's a stronger amount of outflow in the upper levels, because the stronger amount of outflow there is, the less air molecules there is on top of the low level center for more of an upward motion, for more lift to occur surrounding the center of circulation. And that's what we're seeing right here, which is certainly very concerning. Still a lot of days to go, but it does seem like at this point the wind shear will have a major impact when it comes to the possibility of this storm intensifying. Another thing to pay attention to as well is the amount of moisture that will move over the main development region. If we were to take a look forward, we do see that there's going to be plenty of dry air moving through this area, thanks to the fact that this ridge is very strong, and it's going to force a lot of the Saharan dust to move a lot further southward, which will create a strong temperature inversion over this area in the mid-levels, where the warm and moist air mass along the surface won't be able to rise because because it's cooler than the Saharan dust moving over the Atlantic, so it just sinks, and we see a much more stable atmosphere when we see a high amount of Saharan dust move over this region. So that's definitely something to be aware of over the next several days, and it's certainly good news that it'll suppress tropical cyclone activity for the near future, but eventually we're going to reach a point where a much stronger tropical wave will come off the African coast. This will weaken the ridge further northward just a little bit, to the point where less of that Saharan dust will move southward, and we're going to see a fairly moist environment right over the main development region. There still could be a decent amount of dry air that entrains the northern side of this storm. That's definitely the best case scenario, is if the Saharan dust moves over the center of circulation and stabilizes the storm system a bit, to a point where it's going to have a difficult time to develop, but still a lot of days to really iron out where exactly that Saharan dust will be located. So I'll keep you guys updated. But what gives me hope is that, take a look just to the west of this storm system, there's still plenty of dry air and Saharan dust right over the Caribbean. So even if this storm system were to avoid the dust or the dry air mass that's just to the north of it, take a look further westward. We see that it's gonna need to encounter plenty of dry air if this forecast comes for fruition just to the west of it, which could certainly fizzle out this storm as it continues ahead further eastward. I'll keep you guys updated. And another thing too is that the amount of ridging will play a role, because if the ridge is still strong enough to where it could steer the center of circulation further southward, that would mean that there's going to be less rotation, less convergence, and as a result, a much weaker storm system the further southward it moves, thanks to the fact that the Coriolis effect won't have as much of an impact if this storm were to move a little bit further southward. So I'll keep you guys updated regarding all the scenarios with this storm, but still a lot of days are not the forecast. But I'll still just say, just be aware over the Caribbean islands, because with the climatology models forecasting that there could be a strong tropical wave moving into this area, it's definitely something to be aware of. And now we have National Hurricane Center having high confidence that that will occur by next week, that there is at least a possibility of a tropical cyclone development. So make sure to keep that in mind. So this is a ridge that I was just talking to you guys about that could potentially be the saving grace when it comes to this potential tropical wave and keep it from developing into a tropical storm. If this ridge exists by the time we approach next week, and it's strong enough to a point where we're going to see a strong northeasterly flow that would force the storm to move a little bit further southward, then that would certainly inhibit its possibility of this storm system developing, because there will be less rotation and less convergence around center circulation for the winds and the pressure to be a lot higher when it comes to pressure, and weaker when it comes to wind speed, and that would reduce the possibility of tropical storm development. So we're going to need to pay attention to the position of this ridge before we can jump to a reasonable conclusion of the possibility that this will develop into a tropical storm. But nevertheless, the Caribbean should at least be aware of this possibility by next week. We clearly see that the GFS model also has a high amount of confidence that a strong tropical wave will move into the main development region at around the same time period as the European model, which gives me a higher amount of confidence that we could see this develop into a tropical storm, or at least this will have a possibility that this could develop into a tropical storm, based on the fact that both of the computer models are at least expecting a formidable tropical wave to move into this area at around the same time period. The good news is that the GFS model doesn't appear to develop this, as it seems like the ridging is just a little bit too strong, and like I said, the further southward it moves, the less rotation it'll have to be a formidable low pressure system or a tropical storm. So that would certainly inhibit its possibilities, but still a lot of days that aren't out the forecast. So I'll keep you guys updated. In terms of a tropical storm that could develop in the more short-term future, potential tropical storm dawn, we're going to see that this storm system should have a good chance by tomorrow into the early Thursday timeframe. We see that this blocking ridge will prevent it from being able to move very fast to the east. The wind shear, while it will remain strong, it's going to be over an area where the sea surface temperatures will be close to 80 degrees and should have some help when it comes to instability to enhance the convection surrounding this storm system. So there is a moderate possibility this could develop into Tropical Storm Dawn. However, whether this develops or not, it's unlikely to impact land. Maybe expect higher surf right around Bermuda as well as the eastern portions of Canada. But outside of that, you shouldn't worry about this too much, which is certainly good news. But there is a moderate possibility this will develop into Tropical Storm Dawn. So at least be aware of that. So here's the amount of Saharan dust that should move over the main development region over the next several days. We do see that the Saharan dust is quite strong, which I believe will be enough to inhibit at least more short-term tropical waves from developing into a tropical storm. However, when it comes to the more long-term future, we could see that Saharan dust move a little bit further northward as this ridge continues to weaken. I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. In terms of what the Ensemble members are stating when it comes to the possibility of a tropical storm developing over this region, we do have several Ensemble members wanting to take this close to, if not slightly over, tropical storm status in the very long-term future, right around the Saturday, June 22nd timeframe. So definitely at least be aware of this. In the Caribbean, there is an enhanced risk of tropical cyclone development, but still far from certain how strong this will actually be or where exactly it'll go. But I'll keep you guys updated. The European models Ensemble members are also showing a very similar trajectory as well as strength of this potential tropical wave, which makes me concerned that there could be some truth to the fact that tropical cyclone development is possible by next week. Again, I'll stay tuned for more updates. So here's my overall forecast when it comes to the next potential tropical storms that could develop either this week or potentially next week. So for Tropical Storm Dawn, I'll say there's a moderate chance there is expected to be a decent amount of convection that will be induced by instability. So this could be considered a subtropical storm, and it'll develop over sea surface temperatures that could be slightly below 80 degrees. So this might be considered subtropical, but whether this develops or not, it's unlikely to impact land, which is certainly good news. And as for the potential of a tropical storm in this area next week, there is an enhanced risk of a higher level of convective activity, which is the reason why the National Hurricane Center at least is aware of a tropical storm possibility. We're just going to need to wait and see how much Saharan dust will be over the main development region, as well as the position of this ridge, if it's able to move further north enough to where the Coriolis effect could have an impact and could create more rotation or enough rotation around standard circulation for this to become a tropical storm. I'll keep you guys updated, but that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.